Oh, hey y'all. I was going live on Instagram. Peace, peace. It's your good sis Morgan Renee Myers. We're tuning in for another story time with more of my. We are in the book Black Privilege by Charlamagne the God, one of the co-hosts of the famous The Breakfast Club morning podcast. If you don't know, I am also a creatress. I have a business called More of My Creations where I sell beautiful custom crochet pieces as well as body oils, soaps for our free toothpaste. So get into these are the season hoodies that I'm making. Um, this is a red, black, and green. It's not all sewn in, and usually we'll have a drawstring. Let me see real quick. I'll show you the other ones I've been making. I should have had these ready. Hold on. Show you some of my other colors real quick, Ugh. All right. I don't know why I ain't do this before I cut the camera on. Okay. So I got this orange one with like a burnt pumpkin. I've got olive green. I'm just gonna be making these along with different beanies. I'm gonna make a black one. I got like this ombre brown. So yeah. You can follow me at More of My Creations, Moremy Creations on Instagram and Facebook to place your order. But yeah, let's get into this book. I just wanted to let y'all know because it's getting cold out in these streets. This is fall time 2025. You might see this video. All right, so we were in chapter 2, but his chapters are so lengthy. I've been having to do them in part 1 and part 2. Got me some spring water in a glass jar. So let's hop right back into it. At the end of the first part of chapter 2, he was telling us about how his behavior in school, he was just trying so bad to be a thug and not be a nerd, that he ended up getting kicked out of his school and had to transfer to another school that his mother worked at. So yeah, no remorse. As you might imagine, the guys in Goose Creek didn't appreciate my presence in their preppy paradise. Who does motherfucker think he is, they say. Or who said he could come around here like he's the shit. I didn't pay them any mind, though. Knowing they couldn't stand seeing me ride around their nice neighborhoods, blasting Mob Deep and MOP only made me want to do it even more. The tension came to a head one Sunday afternoon when me and two of my boys, Zeke and a guy we call DT, were parked in Goose Creek, kicking it to some girls on the sidewalk. Just then, two black guys from the neighborhood rolled by in a Jeep. Clearly, they didn't like what they saw. We exchanged a couple of what's ups, and then I decided to have a little fun with them. I started walking toward their Jeep, copying Ice Cube and the Boys in the Hood when he yelled, "We got a problem here," while lifting up his shirt and revealing his gap. It was an iconic scene. But when I did it, the 38 I was packing was tucked in so low they couldn't actually see it. Such a lame. As a result, they didn't react, and a crisis, it seemed, was averted. The guys drove off, and we left to go to McDonald's. After we gotten our food, a few minutes later, they pulled up next to us again. Only now, what seemed to be one of their big brothers was driving. They must have picked him up for some muscle. Big bro leaned out the window and yelled, "Yeah, what's up now? Y'all still got a problem?" Before I could say anything, my boy Zeke, who was in the passenger seat of our car, rolled down his window and pointed a 25 caliber pistol at their car. Everyone in the Jeep's eyes got real big, a look of sheer terror that I'll never forget. Mob Deep coined the term shook ones, and that perfectly described how those dudes looked in that moment. Shook. In the next moment, two shots rang out. Pow, pow. After the bullets flew, we shouted Queensbridge or something equally corny. Then DT hit the gas and we sped away without looking back. Here's the really sad part. Even though we just opened fire in the middle of the day on a major thoroughfare filled with people coming back from church, we weren't particularly worried. We didn't place an anonymous call to 911 to say there might be a couple of kids who've just been shot on College Park Road in Ladson. We didn't start hashing out a desperate plan to get rid of the gun or hide our car. We didn't start cooking up alibis we could use if the cops came looking for us. You know what we did do? We drove to Monk's Corner and laughed about what had just happened. "Yo, did you see those niggas' faces when you pulled out the hammer? Word, they look scared shitless." Then we ate our McDonald's. I promise you, we were barely even thinking about it an hour afterward. It was a momentary thrill. Wow, we finally shot our gun at someone for some directionless kids. No more, no less. All that changed the next day. I was in my second period class at Stratford when what looked like most of Goose Creek's police force burst into the room. They scooped me up and marched me back to the principal's office, the whole time asking me, "Where's the gun? Where's the gun?" I didn't answer at first, not because I was playing it cool, but because I honestly had no idea what they were talking about. When we got to the office, I looked through the glass and could see the two younger kids from the Jeep sitting in there. It was only then I understood why the cops had came for me. Once I had processed what was happening, the first thing that popped into my mind was those fucking snitches. I was outraged that they had called the cops over a little harmless gunplay. What suckers. That's how lost I was. Those kids could have easily been shot or killed. Of course they called the cops on us. When the kids saw me, one of them said, "Yeah, he was in the car." With that, the cops threw me in cuffs and dragged me out to a cruiser in front of the entire school. You might think that getting led out of the school in handcuffs would have woken me up a bit or made me realize the severity of the situation, but it didn't faze me one bit. I had no real sense that I'd done anything wrong, so what should I be scared of? Once I got down to the police station, I learned that I'd be facing assault and battery with intent to kill, even though no one had been hit. The bullet was embedded in the headrest behind the front passenger seat. I don't know if Zeke was aiming to miss, but basically he hit the only empty seat in the car. Any other one, and we would have likely been looking at a murder rap. I heard the charges against us, but I still figured I'd be out of jail by nightfall and back in class the next day. That's the mindset I developed over all those years of getting in trouble at school. You do something stupid, serve a little suspension, say you're sorry, and then get right back to it. I couldn't see why this would be any different. There was a big football game coming up the next weekend, and I told myself, as long as I'm out before the game, I'll be good. I put on my orange jumpsuit and waited for someone to come and get me. A day went past, then another, and another. Finally, I got word that my father had shown up. About time, I thought. He's going to bail me out and I'll be able to make the game. But my pops killed that dream real quick when I was finally taken to him. "Boy, you are in some serious fucking trouble," he told me. I know, I replied, trying my best to sound remorseful. "So you're going to get me out?" "Fuck no, you're going to sit here." "What you mean sit here? The game is this weekend. Forget that game. Forget the whole damn season. Forget football," my father told me. "You ain't going nowhere. You're going to sit in this goddamn jail until you decide to get your act together." Once my father got it through my thick skull that I wasn't getting out anytime soon, I settled into the routine of jailhouse life. The worst part was the food. 3 nasty meals a day you only ate because there weren't any other options. The Berkeley County Jail didn't even have a commissary back then, so I used to spend a lot of time on the phone with my mother and my siblings trying to convince them to smuggle in some M&Ms for me. I slept in what they call a pod cell, a big room housing 18 other guys. It was disgusting. There were only 3 showers and 3 toilets for all of us to share. Definitely no place for a teenage boy. What probably saved me was that one of my cellmates was none other than my old buddy Darnell. Yep, the same guy who tried to strangle me a few years earlier. When I walked into that pod, the first time I saw Darnell sitting there, I figured I was a dead man. But rather than pick up the ass whipping where he left it off, Darnell actually gave me props. "I always respected that when I ran up on you, you didn't lie about what you said," he told me. "I liked that you owned it." We actually ended up being cool in large part because we both shared an interest in the 5%ers. On more than a few occasions, we had each other's back, which was important given that we were both teenagers surrounded by men in their 20s or 30s. The only time I had any drama was when I got into a fight with an older dude named Walt. We got into an argument about something stupid. I think Walt just woke up that day pissed off to be in jail, and who could blame him? Later that day, me and some of the boys jumped him in our cell. I thought there might have been some repercussions with the correction officers, but for whatever reason, nothing came of it. My days mainly consisted of spending hours in my pod, reading books, debating about rappers, or even spitting a few rhymes myself with fellow inmates banging on the sides of our bunks for a beat. The only thing I had to look forward to was my next court date. I was in that jail for almost 3 months until my lawyer was able to get my charge of assault and battery with intent to kill reduced to pointing and presenting a firearm. Even though I hadn't shot the gun, I refused to say who did. These were my boys, not some nerds at school. I was going to operate by the code of the street, so in the end, we all got the same charge. You're probably thinking after 3 months behind bars, I was ready to turn my life around. After 3 months of eating hard grits every day, hiding behind trash cans so when it was time to take a shit, they didn't have doors on the toilet wall stalls, and sleeping next to dudes jerking off, I'd be excited to get my life back on track, excited to get away from those thugs once and for all, to return to my nerd roots and start realizing my potential again. Nope. Instead, all I could think about was how great it was going to be to get back on the streets. Since I hadn't snitched, I knew my street cred would be sky high when I got out. I felt like a soldier who just gotten back from fighting for his country and was about to get a ticker tape parade. I knew the perfect setting for my triumphant return would be Berkeley's football game the Friday night after I was released. My father must have sensed what I was planning because he specifically told me not to go to that game. He knew I'd be strutting around like a peacock instead of lying low, which is what you should do when you're a high school student who just finished spending 3 months behind bars for almost killing someone. Ignoring my father's instructions, I not only went to the game, but also came up with the bright idea of getting high as fuck with my friend Jarrell beforehand. Jarrell Garnett, God bless the dead, is and was my brother. He was one of the first street dudes in Mark's Corner to show me love and always had my back. I hadn't smoked any weed while I was locked up, so my tolerance was low. As soon as I set foot in the stadium, I started panicking. Was everyone looking at us? Did the teachers know I was high? What about that security guard? Instead of a returning hero, I felt like a freak. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, so we went back to Jarrell's house. Jarrell's house had become our hangout spot after his mother had gotten married and moved out of town. Jarrell and his older brother Stax inherited the house and started selling weed out of it. After that business took off, the brothers decided to add crack to their menu. It was the last place I should have been chilling at fresh out of jail, but Jarrell was my boy, and I felt comfortable there. After regaling him with some jailhouse stories, we decided to spark up another blunt. We were about halfway through it when my father's black Datsun pulled up in front of the house. Being a hustler himself, my father knew damn well what went on there. I was caught red-handed. There was no point in trying to talk my way out of it, so I just walked down to the car and silently got in. My father was calm at first and pulled off like everything was cool. After driving in silence for a few minutes, suddenly he turned and without warning punched me dead in my face. My head smacked against the glass with a resounding bam. I covered up, expecting more blows. Instead, he just let me have it verbally. I paid all this money to get you out, and you told me you were going to change, he yelled. But you're already back out here doing the same old dumb shit. You've only been out a few days, and you're showing up at high school football games, and now I'll catch you in this dope house? Are you out your mind? My father just gripped the steering wheel and stared ahead before turning to me again and saying, you're going to end up right back in that jail, and I promise you, boy, next time, I'm not getting you out. He knew me too well. Moving packs. South Carolina isn't known for producing a lot of major drug dealers, but all the exploits you heard about, Big Meech and the Black Mafia family doing in Detroit and Atlanta in the 90s, folks were doing it even bigger in my home state. Trust me. Remember how I said that Charleston's port had been a major distribution point for many different commodities like cotton, rice, and slaves? Well, by the mid-1900s, the entrepreneurial-minded people of Charleston had figured out another product they could bring in through the harbor: cocaine. The biggest distributor in the whole state was actually a guy from Moncks Corner named Calvin Washington. Calvin worked as a longshoreman at the Charleston port and somehow linked up with a guy from Panama who had connections. Together, they allegedly figured out how to use Calvin's access to smuggle major weight off the boats and into the streets. Calvin had Berkeley County booming until 2007 when the feds finally caught him unloading 3,000 pounds of coke. That's a street value of over $100 million. Newspapers called it the largest bust in South Carolina history. So, when I say there was a lot of coke in the streets, I'm not exaggerating. Calvin's people lived in a nearby town called Corsville, and it seemed like all of them worked in his organization. Their kids went to school with us and dressed pretty much how you'd expect Coke Don's kids to dress. Lots of gold chains, brand new Jordans, fresh jeans, and creamy leather jackets. I can remember one of them pulling up to school in 8th grade in a brand new Ford Explorer with rims on it. The young lady wasn't even old enough to have a license, but she was driving one of the nicest cars in town. Calvin would get the weight in Charleston and then bring it out to the countryside where he'd break it down into smaller packages. Then his people would hit off local dudes, maybe my pops was one of them, with packs that they could sell on the street. Not surprising for an area where there wasn't much in the way of opportunity. A lot of folks wanted to be down. I never knew where my father was moving his packs, but the younger kids I knew sold dope on an infamous stretch of country road called Highway 6. To the locals, Highway 6 was synonymous with trouble. My grandmother used to tell me she had dreams I'd be killed on that road. She had good reason to be fearful because I saw a lot of young men die on those streets courtesy of the drug game, including John Arnold, a street legend from that era. John stood only around 5'6", but was also cock diesel and did not play games at all. I remember one night I went to McDonald's with John and his cousin Patrick. John just walked in, went behind the counter, and started helping himself to some Big Mac and fries. The staff knew better than to try and stop him. I heard another time he drove up on a motorcycle to confront some dope boys who had threatened his nephew. Those boys were all packing, but John pulled right up on him and announced, if anyone here messes with my nephew again, I'm coming back up here and killing every last one of y'all. Those boys could have shot him up on the spot, but his reputation was so fierce that they didn't dare challenge him. John was mythical in his stature, but true to my dad's prediction, the streets eventually caught up with even him. Word was someone shot him in the back and killed him as he drove away from a drug deal. He was probably only 18 or 19 years old. Another infamous story from the time was about a guy named Pooh, also a big drug dealer in the area. He died racing his sports car down in Charleston. When he crashed, the car split in half and his dirty money went flying all over the road. At first, I was content to watch the dope game from the sidelines. I would be at Jarrell's just smoking weed and playing video games while the other guys conducted their business around me. But after a couple of months watching them put money in their pockets, I started to question why I was holding back. Why be there if I wasn't going to get paid too? I decided to check myself into the game, and Jarrell was more than happy to show me how to play. The first thing he did was give me a $50 slab of crack. When I broke it up, it came out to about 5 rocks, which was worth $100. Once I sold them all, I made $50 profit. After a couple of weeks of $50 slabs, I graduated to a quarter spoon. It was basically 7 grams of crack that, when split up correctly, would earn you about $100 off every gram of crack you produce. So if you spent $250 on your initial pack with a little bit of cooking, you can end up earning around $600 to $700 for your trouble. Not bad for a high school kid. The most weight I ever got up to was a half ounce, which was 14 grams of crack. Generally, though, I would stick to quarter spoons to try to sell at least 3 of those a week. I wasn't too flashy with my profits, only making a couple of decent-sized purchases. One time, this hustler from New York City came to Mark's Corner trying to move stolen Rolexes. I was skeptical if they were real, but a friend told me if it's real, it won't tick. The guy's watches definitely didn't tick, so I bought a rainbow model off him for about $1,000. The most profit I ever had in my pocket at the end of the week was $3,500. At the time, I was dating a young lady and I wanted to show off, so I took her and her roommate on a shopping spree at the mall. Since I was feeling like a big shot, I told both of them, here's some cash, go get whatever y'all want. They didn't hold back. By the end of the afternoon, I was there and there broke again. In an era filled with stupid decisions, this one still stands out to me. What was I thinking? When I first began selling dope, sometimes the fiends would ask what my name was. Even crackheads have manners down south. I was afraid if I said Larry, they would go, oh, ain't you Larry and Julia's son? And somehow word would get back to my father. So whenever someone asked me, I'd say instead, my name is Charles. Soon all my boys started calling me Charlie. In time, that turned into Charlie Chronic because we were smoking so much weed. My homeboy started calling himself Matthew Marijuana, and we called our little crew the infamous Buddha Heads. Corny, I know, but trust me, at the time, it was hot. Once during a stint in night school, I was reading a book that mentioned the famous French king Charles the Great, or Charlamagne, as he was known in French. I learned he was a renowned warrior, but also was famous for spreading education and religion. That sounded very cool to me. Since I was already going by Charles, I figured, why not spice it up and start calling myself Charlamagne? I decided to add the God to the end of it instead of the Great, because the 5%ers believe that we're all gods. Then, for a final twist, I misspelled it Charlamagne with an A instead of Charlemagne with an E. Basically, I wrote it the way I pronounced it. It might seem confusing now, but it all seemed to make sense at the time. The moral of the story is this is why you don't stick with nicknames you gave yourself as a stone teenager. Jarrell and Stack's mother's name was Queen Esther, so we began calling their house Queensbridge, a dual homage to her and Mobb Deep. Another whack name, I know. One Friday, I was hanging out at Queensbridge, selling a little dope with my buddy Juan, who had just come home from doing a bid. I'd run through my stash and was ready to leave, but my replacements hadn't shown up yet. I knew where the stashes were, however, so I decided to stick around and sell some of their stuff too. Not long after that, a black Trans Am pulled up in front of the house. Juan looked out the window, sized up the car, and said, that could be the police. Word, I said, and got ready to run. Just then, a white guy stepped out of the Trans, and immediately I relaxed. It was a dude named Chad who gone to Berkeley High with me and had a huge scar on his head from where he once tried to shoot himself. He was a pretty steady weed customer, and I recognized him anywhere. That's no police, that's just Chad, I said, exhaling. Well, Chad must be working for the police, replied Juan. His OG sense is still on alert. Nah, Chad's cool, I said. He's here all the time. All right, replied Juan. As long as you can vouch for him, we're good. Chad walked up to the house, and I greeted him through the window. Chad, my man, what's the word? Yo, Larry, everything's good. Can you hit me off with a couple of bags of smoke? No doubt, I said, passing him the weed through the window. He handed me back the money. We said peace, and Chad went on his way. Later that night, a bunch of us were sitting around the house playing video games, smoking weed, talking shit, basically doing whatever trap boys do on a Friday night. I had a crack valve in my pocket, so when a car pulled up to the front of the house, I jumped up, ready for a sale. Before I could get to the door, another car pulled up, followed by another and another. While I was still trying to process what was happening, Juan called out, "It's the police!" This time there wasn't any question in his voice. He was stating the fact. Everybody started scattering through the house, flushing dope down the toilet and trying to jump out windows. Then the police started kicking down the door. It was my first time in a situation like that, and all I could think of was the Goody Mob song Dirty South. One to the two to the three to four. Them dirty red dogs then hit the door, and they got everybody on their hands and knees, and they ain't gonna leave till they find them keys. That's pretty much how it went down. I managed to flush my crack down the toilet, but moments later I was on the living room floor on my hands and knees. One of the cops asked me what my name was. "Leonard McKelvey," I mumbled. "Oh," he replied, "we've got a warrant for you." I should have just listened to Juan. Chad was working undercover, and since they already had a warrant for me, evidently they'd been watching the house for a while. Off I went to jail along with some of the other dudes who had been selling in the house with me. As soon as we got to jail and they put us in the cold tank, I started throwing up. Some thug, right? Being locked up again made me physically ill. Since I'd only recently gotten out on the weapon charge, I figured this time they were going to throw me under the jail. I was really screwed this time. Despite my fears, the next day I found out that not only had my father been able to bail me out, but he had also hired a lawyer who managed to get me probation for the weed charge I was facing. I got locked up on a Friday, and by Monday morning I was on my way back to school. I wasn't totally in the clear, though. As soon as I walked in the door, my mother tried to beat me with a belt. "Don't even waste your time trying to beat some sense into this fool," my father said, stepping between us. "He ain't shit. Just kick his stupid ass out instead." Before she could even issue the ultimatum, I was already out the door and headed back to Jarrell's. In my mind, I was a street guy, and street guys didn't take orders, let alone whippings from their mother. A few days later, the bus made the Independent. The reporter wrote something to the effect of the dealers had a sophisticated operation which included a drive-through window through which buyers could purchase drugs. They had it dead wrong, of course. Our sophisticated operation was just me selling Chad weed out the window because I was too lazy to get up for my video game and meet him outside. It might have been an exaggeration, but that article made my street cred skyrocket. I wasn't just a dope boy. I was part of a sophisticated drug ring. What member of a drug ring lives in his home where he isn't respected? What head of a drug ring lets his father put his hands on him? What head of a drug ring bothers going to high school? Not this one. Nope, you couldn't tell me I wasn't a real nigga in them Mox Corner streets, and I was a real stupid nigga, one who couldn't see that his choices were leading him further and further down a dead-end path. Why his daddy get him out of jail? Because when he had the weapons charge, his daddy told him, he punched him in the head and told him, next time you're going to sit there. But he came and got him immediately. This time he didn't have to sit 3 months. Interesting. Alright, the power of God. I'm not proud about much from that time in my life, but one thing I can say I never did was ask God to look the other way when it came to my sins. I've always believed God gives us the freedom of choice when it comes to our actions. We can choose to submit to the God in us, which is our higher selves, or we can choose to submit to the devil in us, which is our lower selves. Future once rapped, "Fuck what you heard, God blessing all the trap niggas." I love Future, but I have to say he got that one wrong. Fuck what you heard, God is not blessing none of you trap niggas. Why would God bless you for ruining the community? You really think pumping poison to the people is worth you being blessed? Man, God is sending each and every one of you the trap niggas prayer to his spam folder. He don't even receive those emails. Nevertheless, trap niggas always seem to think God is going to co-sign their BS. I remember my friend Zeke called me from jail one time and said, "Man, do that thing you be doing for me." I asked him what he was talking about. "That thing you be doing when you be talking to God." "You mean praying?" I asked. "Yeah, do that for me if you can." I couldn't believe Zeke didn't even know how to pray. In this case, I did pray for him because Zeke was my guy, but I also told him God had nothing to do with this situation. What he really needed was a lawyer and bail. I had another homeboy who told me about a time he was trafficking guns from South Carolina to New Jersey. While he was driving through Virginia, he found himself on one of those dark backcountry roads. If you've ever made that road trip, you know Virginia has some scary back roads where you can see the mountains and it feels like Bigfoot is going to jump out in front of your car at any moment. Well, my boy didn't see Bigfoot, but he did see something much scarier. A state trooper pull up behind him. Ever been driving a car full of illegal guns while smoking weed and the police get behind you? No? Well, it creates optimum paranoia. You know, once the cop hits those blue lights, pulls you over and asks to search the vehicle, it's a wrap. My friend is a pastor's kid. The irony, right? But his reaction to the cop getting behind him was to pull out his gun and cock it. When I asked him why, he explained he knew he had to kill the cop in order to get his way. Nigga, what? I asked, but he was dead serious. He wasn't going to prison. My boy told me that after he pulled his gun, he said a prayer to God. Seconds later, the cop hit his lights. Miraculously, instead of pulling him over, the cop just passed him and sped off to whatever emergency he was responding to. Here's the thing. My boy told that story as a testimony to God's power. In his twisted mind, God answered his prayer and made the cop drive past him. When he told me that, I looked him dead in his eye and said, man, if you don't shut your dumb ass up, God wasn't looking out for you. He was looking out for the cop. My boy probably got confused because he thought he was communicating with God when he was really chopping it up with the devil. That makes an easy mistake. That's an easy mistake to make because the devil is the one who makes the most noise. God doesn't make a big fuss. If anything, he damn near whispers. You either listen or you don't. Everything good that happens to you is because of God. Everything bad that happens to you is on you because you made the choice not to recognize the power of God in you. It was your choice. That's why I hate when people say they found God. Man, God was never lost. You were. There was never a missing persons report out for our Creator. Like father, like son. My relationship with God might have remained rock solid, but my relationship with my pops was crumbling. His warnings were clear, but I wasn't listening. One of the reasons was because he wasn't exactly following a straight and narrow path either. For starters, his cheating on my mother had been getting more flagrant. Eventually, it would come out that he'd had a second family on the side, but at the time, all I knew was that things were really bad between my parents. My father had always been my authority, and I listened to his guidance to this day. Still, seeing him hurt my mother weakened his stature in my eyes. If you're trying to get a point across to a knucklehead teenage boy, you got to show and prove your actions and deeds. Your example is what gets through to a teenager, not words. Unfortunately, my father's examples almost completely contradicted everything he had been telling me. He'd tell me not to sell coke, but I end up in jail because I end up in jail, but he was out there moving it himself. He'd tell me don't hang out with street dudes, but he was one of the biggest street dudes in the area. It's no wonder my attitude toward him became whatever, man. Our issues came to a head one day after the cops pulled my father over in Kitsfield and found a little coke in his car. They must have decided he was some sort of kingpin because they then showed up at my mother's house with a search warrant. I happened to be home and told my mother she didn't have to sign the warrant. While I was trying to calm her down, the cops started shouting that they were going to come back later and kick down the door. Despite my protest, she caved and let them in. The reason I didn't want the cops inside was because I happened to have a vial of crack on me. When the cops started banging on the door, I stuffed it in the pocket of a coat that was hanging in my closet. Once the cops were inside, they started tearing through the entire house, including the closet. When they pulled out the coat, I figured I was a goner. But unbeknownst to me, the pocket had a hole in it, and the vial had fallen in the jacket lining, where, in their rush, the cops somehow missed it. I breathed a silent sigh of relief. My reprise was short-lived. Inside one of our trash cans, the cops found a little plastic lunch bag I used to carry the crack before I put it in the vial. There weren't even any rocks left in the bag, just some residual dust. That was enough for the cops, though. They weren't about to leave the house without an arrest. My father evidently didn't have anything stashed there, so back to Berkeley County Jail I went. Well, darn. Guess who was sitting in the cell when I got there? Yep, my pops. Now, when they brought me in, did he ask what happened or are you alright? Nope. First, the only thing he said was, listen, boy, do not say nothing all weekend, not a word. It was a Friday, and for the next 3 days, we just stared at each other. No one uttered a single word. I later found out he insisted on silence because he was convinced our cell was bugged. When Monday came, they had to let us both out since between us they found less than a gram of coke. Cowboy and son weren't kingpins after all. Outside the jailhouse, we didn't have an emotional embrace or a heart-to-heart talk. Instead, we started bickering over whose fault it was that we'd been busted. You're paying for your own lawyer this time, my father scolded me. What? I shot back. I only got caught because they had a search warrant for you. Yeah, he replied, but you shouldn't have had anything in the house anyway. This is on you. That's what our relationship had deteriorated to. A father and his teenage son arguing over whose fault it was that they both been arrested on the same day. Pick your P. Because the beginning of this is called PYP. Pick your pain, pick your passion, poison, or procrastination. Even though our weekend in jail represented the height of dysfunction, I still give my father a lot of credit for helping me get out of the hole I dug for myself as a young man. Given some of the situations that I've got myself into, that might not seem like a surprise. And it's true, at the time, my father felt like one of my biggest enemies. He screamed on me, he threatened me, he whooped my ass more than one time. The one thing he never did, however, was give up on me. No matter how many times he swore he wouldn't bail me out again, the next time I got locked up, he'd be there with the money. No matter how many times he called me out or even tried to knock me out, once the emotions had cooled, he would be there by my side, pushing me to make something out of myself. It's not easy to stand in front of your son after the two of you have spent the weekend in jail and say, boy, you need to get your life together. But my father did it. No matter how messy his own affairs were, he looked me dead in the eye and say, you need to do better. Don't do what I do what I say. My father probably didn't know William Jennings Bryant from Will I Am, but he sure as hell understood the concept of destiny is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of choice. Every lecture, every threat, and every pep talk was based around the simple principle that life wasn't just happening to me. I wasn't being pulled along by some invisible force that I had no control over. No one forced me to sip a 40 at recess. No one told me to punch that kid in the cafeteria or to smack the other kid with a lock. No one made me walk up on that Jeep, just as no one forced me to sell weed to Chad or start hanging with the dope boys at Jarrell's. Each and every one of those situations resulted from a choice that I made. He beat that concept into my head, figuratively and literally, until I finally came to understand it as a fact. Be miserable or motivate yourself. Whatever has to be done, it's always your choice. That's a quote by Wayne Dyer. Today, I've taken that concept and turned it into a maxim I call PYP. Pick your poison, procrastination, or passion. It reflects my belief that we have three basic choices in how we approach our lives. We can pick our poison, which is doing the dumb shit that might make us a little bit of money or temporarily feel like a big shot, but in the long run will destroy our lives. The devil is always pushing the poison on us. For me, the poison was selling drugs. For others, it could be doing drugs. It could be gambling, chasing money, or constant cheating. There are a lot of poisons to pick from out there. We can pick our procrastinations, which are those choices that aren't as obviously negative as our poisons, but still don't take us where we need to go. When I was acting crazy in school, drinking 40s and yelling good laugh, that was a form of procrastination. I hadn't graduated into pure thugdom yet, but I wasn't pursuing my potential either. The danger of procrastination is that we can get stuck in it for our entire lives. Even after we start our careers, we can get caught up in a cycle of choices that don't poison our lives, but don't propel them either. Staying at a job that you don't care deeply about for 15 years reflects this sort of choice, as does staying in a romantic relationship where the spark has been gone for a long time. Those are choices. You can always find a new job if you're prepared to hustle and make sacrifices. You can always find a new love if you're prepared to be fearless and take life as it comes. A lot of people choose not to make those choices. They'd rather wait for the chance they'll fulfill their destiny than actually choose to grab it. Our other choice is passion. One of the reasons I always refer to myself as a member of the Pinkett Smith, Winfrey, Knowles Carter family is because those are examples of 5 powerful black people who have always picked their passion in life. Individuals who never let their circumstances or their situations dictate how they were going to live their lives. They never settled. They always went for what mattered to them. Those are the people I strive to emulate. When I was young, my passion was learning. I felt energized and fulfilled when I was reading a book or addressing a class. Then I got disconnected from my passion. My life and the lives of the people around me suffered greatly because of it. It wouldn't be until I weaned myself off the poison that was drug dealing and street life once and for all that I would be able to recognize the passion that will refocus and transform my life. The radio. And hence, he's a talk show host on a radio show. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 2. The next chapter is principle 3. Fuck your dreams, and we'll get into that another time. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you like to keep up with these stories, I've been doing more story time with More of Mine for several years now. My goal has been to bring awareness to black authors, but I have expanded it to reading different types of authors, but black authors first and foremost, to promote literacy. So yeah, if you're interested in that, on YouTube, my channel is my name, Morgan Myers. Last name is spelled Myers. It's a red logo with a yellow M inside for my brand, More of My Edutainment. And then More of My Creations is where I make all the crochet goodies and sell the body and burning oils and fluoride-free toothpaste and African black soap. And I'll be adding tonics and tinctures to it soon. So yeah, if you like these hoodies or you want a custom beanie for this upcoming winter, I am going to be doing a Black Friday sale coming up. So y'all stay on the lookout for that. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'll check in again with y'all soon. Hope y'all have an amazing rest of y'all day. Stay hydrated and get your health and wellness and some time for yourself in today. All right. Peace and love.